Hi, hello, my name is Lizette Rodriguez, and for my final project, I chose to do topic number three, which is analyzing regional symbols and themes prevalent in the Mexican American culture. I will be talking about the work made by Oscar Casares in part of the 2000s, and the work is called the In the Year 1974. So, a little bit about Mr. Oscar Casares is that he was born in 1964 in Brownsville, Texas. He grew up on the U.S. Mexican border, and he writes fictions rooted in the Tano identity, which it involves everyday family rituals and border realities. His known works includes Brownsville Stories and Amigoland, and he is praised for capturing the rhythms of bilingual speech and small, intimate family moments. So, about the anthology made in Echon, Texas, the book that we're reading for this course, it is edited for Tejano literature for history of people making a place for themselves in a place that often denies them. And that's something that Casade's story fits into this mission because it preserves a live moment of Tejano identity through memory. And yeah. So, a little bit of summary of the 1974s. The story is powerful because it shows how children feel everything, especially things that grown ups try to hide. This is about an adult narrator, Mr. Oscar Casare, who looks back at the age of 10. He remembers a quiet but emotional moment with his father, and not much is said, but everything you can feel it in the story. It's about a child sensing fear, tension, and vulnerability, and it is a moment that becomes a lifelong memory. This story centers on the narrator observing his father going through an emotional, heavy experience, and as a child, he doesn't have the vocabulary to name it, but he feels the tension and confusion of what stands out is not what is said, but what is not said. So, in order for you to understand a little bit about this story, is that you just understand where the setting is. So the setting is in Brownsville, Texas, and it's a world where culture isn't just around you, but it's in you. I had the amazing opportunity to visit Brownsville, and I can definitely say it's like being in America and being in the United States and also being in Mexico. It's true border town. It is bilingual and bicultural. They have a lot of working class neighborhoods. It is very family centered life. You'll always see families just roaming around the mall, roaming around in the downtown and stuff like that. And Spanish and English, it's blend in naturally, such as like the term Spanglish. I believe it is very much used here, and the identity is shaped by the place. So yes. Some things that I found was masculinity and silence. The Tejano masculinity is where like the father shows love quietly, not very emotionally. The vulnerability of hidden beneath strength, and then how children learn through observations. Something about the emotional silence was what isn't said matter most. Communication comes through gestures, tones, and pauses. The Hanuman of earlier generations often carried emotional burdens privately, and there was one scholar note that that said that silence is a cultural form of communications in many Mexican American family, and that's something Casares used in silence to show love, fear, and vulnerability. Another one of the themes was memory and identity. The narrator realizes that later in life, that moment really meant a lot. That's how memory works. It teaches you lifelong lessons after it happens. The memory was that the childhood memory stayed within him throughout his whole entire years, and then how memory becomes a way of understanding culture. Some of the border identities that were met in this story was the living between two cultures, seeing the world through different blended lenses, but also feeling both American and Mexican, and sometimes one at once. Some of the symbolism in this story is that in the 1974 was whenever it represented a time of cultural change, identity shifts, and new political awareness. As in their home, the home represents a comfort but also unspoken emotional tension, and it becomes a symbolic space where cultural expectations are passed down. Like, for example, he mentioned a lot about the food, about how he felt like his father had like a philosophy of like, since they're Mexican, like they can eat Mexican food, and then since they're also American, they can eat American food, but since they're not Chinese, they cannot eat Chinese food. so they have to stay within, like, the cultural expectations that are passed down, because the ancestor worked so much for their food, therefore they have to like eat their food. And then something else was like the father of spotty um, gestures, which it showed how Casares uses small physical emotions as symbols of emotional struggle. The subtle cues reflect on the spoken emotional world of Mexican American fathers. So, why is this story regionally important? It represents South Texas with honesty, shows bilingual life naturally, not as a stereotype, but it also highlights emotional realities in Tejano's homes, and it captures a border childhood with depth. This story isn't about the big events, but it is about the emotional truth of growing up being a Tejano. Why it matters today is we often really don't see stories like this, and the fact that this is a biography made it more emotional, and because it is real and it reflects, once again, a family, a Tejano family. It preserves the cultural memory. It let readers feel the weight of silence in some families. It shows identity is shaped by place and people, and it gives spaces to voices that aren't always centered. In conclusion, Casares uses memory and symbolism in regional identities, and it reveals emotional realities in the Mexican American families. It shows how childhood shapes adulthoods, and a quiet but powerful contribution to the Tejano literature scene. By examining masculinity, silence, and family and cultural landscapes, Casares demonstrates how powerful one's childhood moment can be shaping a personal and cultural identity as a whole. These are my works cited, and thank you so much for listening. This story might seem a little small, but it really impacted a way of my thinking, as it does carry a whole world inside of it. Thank you.